This is not going to be specific to SAP Analytics Cloud for the first 10 minutes. It's just going to be general best practice tips. Then we're going to jump directly into the tool, and we're going to start talking about what we could do different with an existing report. And during that time, you'll be seeing SAP Analytics Cloud. Please keep in mind, the first report you'll see is going to be intentionally very, very ugly. So don't judge SAP Analytics Cloud based on how absolutely ugly we make the first report that you see. It's actually part of the presentation, so you can get some feedback. After that, so we're going to do kind of a very compressed version of our best practices webinar. After we do that, we're going to go into some of the more advanced topics. So some of the things we're going to be covering is we're going to go really deep in on when you would use responsive Canvas versus when you would use a regular Canvas and what you can do different between the two of them. We're going to talk quite a bit about the GeoMap capabilities. We're going to go into some R visualizations and what you can do there. We'll, of course, talk about our templates, our story-wide preferences. We'll talk about what resources you have available. We're going to talk about transparency, borders, some auto-formatting options, etc. So, again, we'll start with the viz portion, and then we're going to keep going from there. Okay, so really, really quick. We're just going to go through this. This is kind of, so I have my background in animation. So I did 2D and 3D animation, so I drew a ton. And then I ended up getting my MBA. I went into data visualization, and I designed reports and dashboards for hundreds of different organizations. I don't think I'm an expert on this, even though other people think I am. I just think I've learned a lot from doing this nonstop and from other people sharing their opinions and helping me become better. So I'm going to show you kind of what I normally see when I'm getting started, and I'm going to walk through my thought process as I'm visualizing it. So this is kind of just a really quick view of kind of the most generic default dashboard that people end up sending me when I'm first getting started. It's not too bad. It's laid out in a tile-based approach. I've got a lot of good information in here. It just may be a little bit hard for me to immediately find it and see it. Now, for me, as I'm first going through, the very first thing I like to do is like to wipe out all that chart junk. So when I say chart junk, those are things like, check out this. We have this legend for revenue. Do you need a legend if there's only one item in the legend? It's not a legend at that point. It's just redundant. You can always move the legend into the title, like you see here, quarterly revenue, and remove the legend. This is so basic, but I see it all the time when I look at your designs. I'll see it where you have a legend with only one thing inside of the legend. So wipe out that. Also, all these intersecting, dividing lines, I don't need to see them. I can read the chart just fine without it. So make sure you get rid of all this. Now, it's funny that I'm doing this first. This is more because, again, I'm a visual person. So if you're more logical, you'd want to do this last, this type of formatting and cleanup. But for me, I have a very visceral reaction when I see an ugly dashboard, and I want to clean it first before I do anything else. So the next thing I do is I just wipe out anything that's 3D. If you ever see a chart and you think, whoa, that chart looks so cool, that's probably not a chart you should be using. It's probably really cool looking, but really ineffective, like this 3D translucent bar chart, which you can make in Excel. Don't ever use something like that. That's really, really ugly. And this pie chart where, slices of the pie are receding into the background, it's really hard to see, it's in 3D. Yeah, try not to do that. In general, don't use pie charts if it's more than 2 or 3 items, right? You just want to make sure it's really fast and easy to read. Please. Okay, so we wiped out the 3D. Next, we need to get rid of anything we don't actually need to be showing. And this is common. People have all of this data. They've never been able to see it. It's been locked up in a warehouse somewhere, and they're finally able to visualize it. So they want to visualize everything. Well, over time, they'll learn to start focusing on what really matters. But for instance, I have my quarterly revenue and I have my weekly revenue. That's the same information, just focus me on one, not the other. And then I also have it where I have this bottom left chart. I'm seeing really fine-grained transactional level information. I don't want to have to look at that. That's way too much detail. In this situation, what I would do, let's say, hey, let's put this on a slide later on in your deck, or let's make it as a pop-up of data, or let's push it somewhere else. Let's push this data back, and then if they don't end up using it after a couple months, I just delete it. But it's good to just obscure and start hiding all of that information. Now, we switch over to focusing on what's the right visualization for what we're doing. So I see this often too, where we always want to view things as some form of a chart, like this new customers chart in the bottom corner. I'm viewing as bars. It's fine to just do it as a numeric point number. Also, I've got this table. Maybe I can simplify that table away and just turn it into a bar chart as well and just stack it from top to bottom. And then, same thing, I like to do my time as a line, but this is fine. Bar or line, I think you're fine with that. And so I've switched that over to be a line chart. And then this last one says sales by region. Note what I've done here. When I've changed it where I've stacked it, and I'm running it from top to bottom instead of from left to right. Why am I doing this? So why do you think I would have changed this chart to make it where I'm stacking it from top to bottom instead of doing it from left to right? There's a variety of really good answers here. Yeah, much easier to compare, right? When you're stacking it from top to bottom, you don't have to view it the same way as we did before. It's so much faster to be able to compare it that way. That text is a lot easier to read too. And for time, it's a lot better. So first off, when you ever seen it where the the dimension titles start getting more and more squashed? If you run it this way, you don't have that risk as much. But the biggest advantage is what we just mentioned, which is viewing it for time. So this one, quarterly revenue, as I look at it, from left to right, I know it's over time, right? I go from Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. Now, if I only very quickly looked at this sales by region chart, I may not know that it's running over time or not, because it almost looks like it's a trend, right? If you didn't see the West, Midwest, Southwest at the bottom, and you just had a second to look at this chart, you might think it is a time-based chart. When you stack it, though, it's always really clear this is not time-based. This is something I'm just stacking and comparing. So once I've gone ahead and I've chosen a better chart visualization type, then I started thinking about big, little, and small. So like if you look at your iPhone, and I think the iPhone has some great design elements, but I also think it has some bad design elements. One bad design element is the fact that on an iPhone, every single button is the exact same size. So I don't know who here on the call has an iPhone, but have you ever just found yourself scrolling between your different pages of icons trying to find the right icon? And it's hard because it's all the exact same size. Now, color helps out a bit, but sometimes I just find myself sitting there trying to find whatever small, less used application on my phone. The way that you can help people out is by avoiding just a completely, every single tile being the exact same size. Instead, try to focus on big, little, and small. So I like to put my most important content to my left-hand corner, and then I like to flow from left to right with the content that's most important. Now, the next thing I do is I try to make sure that my eye is focusing on the data. So note the difference between these two. So if you blur your eyes and you look at this one, the thing that pops out the most to me is revenue, new customers, it's chart titles. Now, the chart titles never change. If I'm seeing the same report, month after month, week after week, day after day, and my eyes constantly drawn to the chart titles, which never change, that's not very valuable for me as an executive, right? So what we want to do is we want to help that executive out by making it where that's subdued and the data pops more. You want your eye to be drawn to the data. I want to be able to quickly and visibly be seeing what the trend is or what's going on. Now, after that, let's wipe out any color. So a lot of times I'll see a really good dashboard, but it's just way too colorful. You don't need to do that. Try to avoid any greens or reds or anything or yellows, anything that has a strong connotation of value. At this point, just flatten everything out. Make everything very generic. You can use grays, blues, purples, blacks, whatever you want to use. Just try to make sure that it starts flattening out a little bit. Now you notice also I'm adding this gray square. This is just to create some visual rest. So I like to have something to balance out the page so it doesn't turn too bright and too white. Now, if you're looking for good colors, there's actually a science to it. And you can always go to something like Adobe Color. In Adobe Color, you can put in your corporate colors, and it will output different color palettes that would work with your corporate colors. So if you're not using Adobe Color and you need help with color, definitely give this a try. I've seen many people who have adopted to using these types of color wheels, and their palettes look gorgeous. And then I've seen many people where maybe they need to use something like this a little more often. Okay, so we've wiped out our colors. Now we're going to do the most important part, which is adding context. So if you look at this dashboard, this is pretty good, but there's a huge problem, which is I don't know how well we're doing. I can't quickly and easily tell what I need to be focusing on. So by adding the goal lines and thresholds, now I can much more quickly see where my eyes should be drawn to and what I should be doing, right? So now I can see, okay, new customers is an issue, need to follow up with the Midwest, I need to follow up with Huli and Bakhmanadi. Now you can throw the logo on it, call it done. I'm not the biggest fan of the tile-based approach because I have to read like a bunch of different shapes, right? So 5 different shapes my brain's interpreting. If you can, try to actually merge stuff together onto the same panels, and then that should feel a lot cleaner as well. Again, we're kind of sprinting through this portion, but this is kind of just to give you a really quick overview. This is how my brain thinks in terms of data viz. So again, our starting point, and go ahead and try to find what's most valuable on this page versus where we've ended up now. Okay, so now we're going to jump directly into the tool. So first, by a quick way of introduction, SAP Analytics Cloud is different from business objects. It has different use cases. It's much more focused on live data connectivity. It's more focused on, mobile type consumption. So it's not going to be, as strong as what you get with business objects for print distribution, things like that. This is a product that's much more focused on a use case that is, where things are going more in the future with how data is more live and interconnected, et cetera. You can connect to both SAP and non-SAP sources. So we have like a JDBC driver, we have OData connectors, but then for SAP, you can connect live to a universe, you can connect live to HANA, you can connect live to BW, you can connect live to S4. So you have a lot of these types of connectivity capabilities. You can also be bringing data in from Google Drive. You could acquire data from Salesforce. So we have a number of different connectors that you can play around with to get started. So what you're seeing, we're going to jump into the application now, but as you're looking at this application, note, I didn't have to install anything. I didn't have to configure anything. I don't have to figure out if I'm on the latest version. It's always the latest version. I'm accessing it on the cloud, and I can get to it right from here. So this is a really, really, really ugly dashboard that I built in SAP Analytics Cloud. So for those of you who have never seen the product before, I promise you can make more beautiful things. But I just wanted to close our conversation on data viz best practices by asking you for some feedback. So now we're going to test you on what we just went through for the first 15 minutes. I want to ask you, what could I improve about this absolutely gorgeous dashboard that I've built? So what do you guys think? What would you change as you're looking at this? What thing? Yeah, the colors. Colors are disturbing, right? The pink with purples and greens, colors everywhere. What else would you change? No scrolling. Absolutely. Look how far I have to scroll down to get places. Yep. Really good question. GeoMap. What about the GeoMap? What do you guys think about the GeoMap? Yeah, bar charts with only one value. Check that out. Yep. The map, it's not clear. No, it's not. And especially because of the colors, right? We have this very, very visually busy map. And then we have all of these colors that are interacting with that visual map. Yeah, exactly. Good catch, Ahmed. Those colors on the GeoMap look like part of the painting. Really good point. And someone caught it. Yep, that pie chart has way too many values. When it gets to this point, we call it a Wheel of Fortune chart. So if ever you have a chart that looks like a Wheel of Fortune chart, you know you've gone way too far. Good catch. Unwanted image. And this, unfortunately, is really common. There's a lot of people where they just want to put an image in. They think somehow that makes it a design. So they'll take some strange stock art and they'll just throw it right on there. So I've got some hourglass for carbon footprint, some numeric science. You can just get rid of all this. You don't need it. It doesn't help me. And looking at it every single day, after a while, I will resent you. Good catch. Any other feedback? Simplify. Yeah, so a lot of these charts we should just get rid of, right? A little too much. The spreadsheet at the bottom. Yeah, do you really need Are you going to sit there when you're in the top level of your report and read through a spreadsheet? I love this type of functionality, but maybe I should be clicking into it or filtering down to it, jumping to a detail screen. This should not be, on my main page. And can we use tabs instead of scrolling? Absolutely. And switch that airports to a horizontal bar. So someone caught this one over here. So check out this. There's actually a scroll bar on this chart as I go from left to right. That is terrible. So yeah, we would want to get rid of that as well. Okay, great. So I'm going to jump in and just show you really quick how easy it is to format on this, just so you get an idea of it. There's obviously a lot of errors with this, but I just want to show you how quick and easy it is to do some formatting from within the application. And then we're going to spend around 6 more minutes on this, and then we're going to switch over to just straight up going into just feature after feature after feature and what we can do with it. But let's show you what we can do just with this existing one. So you have a designer panel. Anything you click on, you can format. So I just clicked on the background, if you couldn't tell what I was doing. And let me hide this for a second, but please do keep commenting. So I can come in, and I told you I like to just kind of blank things out first, right? Like that's my main thing. I prefer blues because they're very calming, very simple. So I'm just going to kind of normalize this color palette first. Again, most people would do this last. The reason I do it first is it's just too much of visual havoc for me. I just cannot look at this without having a pretty strong reaction to it. So obviously I see this a lot too, where someone feels the need to write the word dashboard on a dashboard. I'm pretty sure they'll figure it out that they're in a dashboard. So you can always hide stuff like that. I told you about how I like to put things on panels, so I'm just going to throw this on panels. Get rid of these unnecessary divider lines. I see this all the time. People want to just do divider line, divider line, divider line. I don't need to see it. Get rid of it. This geomap was awful. Inside of SAP Analytics Cloud, we have a variety of maps you can use. The National Geographic map is good as a visual piece. It's not good for your overlapping data. Try something like either this light gray map or use something like this dark gray map. Either of these, do you see how strong that contrast is compared to that? The data is lost inside of that visualization. So do something like this, and it's going to look a lot nicer. Now, I still don't even know why I have so many colors going on here. So let's go ahead and take a look at how we can wipe out some of these colors. So this color palette, apparently I chose the brightest one I could go with. But there we go. So now it's more normalized in with the blues that we're using, right? Now we talked about this one where we may want to go ahead and take this chart and switch its orientation back to being this one. I don't need to be showing. So you can show what you want to show and hide. I'm going to get rid of that legend because I don't need it. I'm even going to get rid of some of that chart details. And then I'll go ahead and say I just want to take a look at the top 5. And that reads a lot better to me. Now, same thing, I don't want to be using multiple color palettes, so I'm going to wipe that out as well and switch it over into that blue format. Now, just from even where we started, I feel so much better because I already have it where I'm not seeing all of these really, really nasty colors. So same thing, I would come over here and start formatting this. And so you can always remove the background color entirely, which is what we're going to do here. And I'm going to make everything, I'm going to white out the text and everything. I'm going to get rid of these charts. Because remember, it's a chart with one bar. If it's a chart with one bar, what you meant to do was you meant to use a number, right? So I'm going to go ahead and change this over. Now, I'm manually doing everything, but there's actually a way to automatically do everything through the story-wide preferences. So if you've ever sat here doing what I'm doing, you realize, well, this takes forever, right? Maybe I don't want to do it this way. So yeah, you can actually jump into the story-wide preferences and apply it all at once to everything. The reason why I'm showing it to you this way is just that way you know how to individually format charts, and that way you can kind of repeatedly see it. Otherwise, I would have just done it in one fell swoop, and you wouldn't have been able to learn as much from how I'm doing it. So yeah, so I'm starting to just format this a little bit. I have a problem grabbing this chart. You get the idea. I'm going to start moving these over to here and switching them over into numeric points. I'm going to take this, and this is going to be my centerpiece. I always like to have one really nice big chart. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put everything up on panels. So I'm just going to lay down an object. And yeah, we need to get rid of some of these charts, guys. This is overkill. Goodbye, businesswoman. We will miss you. Goodbye, unnecessary table. By RSS feed. So I'm just going to layer this. And it works a lot like PowerPoint. So if you've used PowerPoint before, you're going to know how to use this. You can layer objects from front to back. So I can come in here and say, I want to go jump over to the designer panel. And I just want to push this all the way to the back. Right? So now we're kind of making this feel more like it's on a panel or something like that. And again, I'm just going to keep changing these to numeric points. Whoops. Getting rid of the background color. Changing this. So we're not going to go too far into this, but I just wanted to show you how we could start simplifying this down, down, down. And then, of course, we want our margins to line up a little bit better, etc. So I would have kept going with this, and ultimately I would have ended up reformatting it to look a little bit more like this, where I've thrown things. So something got wrong with my font colors. They got reset to gray, but you get the idea. I'm putting multiple charts onto the exact same panel. So instead of having it where it's tile-based, I'm putting multiple things on the same exact tile. And I'm making sure all my main content, if I went into a view mode, that all of my main content would be above the fold. So anything that I actually want you to see, if I was in full screen mode, it better just show up automatically right there, right? So everything fits in the page like you're saying. I don't have to scroll. I don't have to think about it. Now, if there's like a secondary piece of information and you really want them to learn about it, sure, you can keep it on the page and they can scroll down as long as you know that all of your main primary content is left here and super visible for them to be able to see. Thanks for offering to upgrade to Sierra during this webinar, Apple. That was very nice of you. So, okay, so this is just to show you some of those some of those best practices in effect and how we can start implementing them. Now, this is a bit of an older design, but it gives you a really quick idea of what we could be doing there. So now let me jump out and let's start playing with some more advanced kinds of designs. So the first story we were working on today was built using canvas-based design. That's where you can overlap objects. You can do all the types of stuff you saw me doing where I was saying arrange to front, arrange to back. That's because it's a canvas. It's pixel perfect and allows me to set it the exact way I want. We have a second mode, which is responsive. So here's my responsive base template. So let me give you an example of how these two might look different. So let me just pull this up really quickly. So here's my canvas-based version of my JF technology company. It should be centering. I'm not sure what's going on. Okay, there we go. So canvas-based, so I have a lot of transparency going on, overlapping objects, this nice, beautiful blue gradient. So lots of things are happening here. So this is actually an image background, lots of things overlapping with each other. The only thing is this would not look very good on my mobile device. It would have a hard time to break up all these different components and rearrange them. So what I've done is I've rebuilt the exact same thing, but in a responsive layer. So a lot flatter, a lot cleaner, but definitely a different look and feel. Now, let me show you what the big difference is between these, is obviously how it responds as my container changes size. So I'm going to come here, and I've resized it, and look, it is the exact same no matter what I do, right? But let's go ahead and take a look at this one, and as I resize it, it actually resizes as I go. So it'll even go down to the breakpoint of a mobile screen. So this one is completely responsive, and there's multiple breakpoints of it, and as I increase or shrink it, you'll see it moving around to accommodate those different blank points. So only these responsive ones will show up on the mobile device. Only my responsive ones. If I haven't saved it as responsive, you won't be able to see it. And you can't do bring to front or bring to back. Why is that? Can anyone figure out why that would be? You're not going to be arranging front to back on responsive because I need to be able to reflow your content. So I can push it down, push it back up. That's how it would work. So now let's talk about why I might want to do one versus the other in these two different designs. So you've already seen with responsive, it's really nice because it's shrinking. It's going to look good on my mobile device. It's going to work really well. But you saw with my Canvas ones how I can overlap things. So I'm going to build something just as a really quick example for you. So let me show you what I can do with a Canvas-based page. What I'm going to do is I'm going to upload this picture from my desktop. So I've got this nice thermometer. And let's see. I'm going to eyeball it for today, but I'm going to try to get this to look around the same color. So give me a second. We're just going to light it. There we go. That looks about the same, right? So we're on this canvas-based design. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw down a chart. And let me show you something cool that you can do with this canvas-based design. So let's choose a measure. Let's say percentage of females or something like that. And then I'm going to take this exact chart, and I'm going to rotate it. So remember I said never do this? Well, I'm going to do it. And then I'm going to change the color of this to make it just a little bit bolder. Okay, sure. Now I'm going to hide out a whole bunch of elements. Do you guys know what I'm going to do yet? I'm guessing you figured it out. Now this is really cool, but I can make it where this can now become a status bar because I'm going to overlap them, right? So you can normalize the chart too to make sure that it sticks to a specific axis, right? But I can take this and I can push it to the back now, like we were talking about before, and look at that. So with overlapping objects, I can make it now as the data changes, my thermometer fills up, it doesn't fill up, etc. Right? So that indicator can go down or up, and that's because really all I'm doing is I've uploaded an image, and that image is in the foreground, and then I have a chart right behind it. So that's why I can make it look cool like that. Pretty fun, right? Now, there's something else you can do with responsive designs. Let me just throw down a couple more images so we can play around a bit. So we'll throw this logo down. So one thing that you can do with responsive, so everything's snapping to a grid. You can't see it, but it's snapping to a small grid. It'll move it. I'm sure you can tell, but as I let go, it will move it and snap it to the exact spot that it should exist. So it's not really pixel perfect, is it? Not if it's snapping this way. So let me show you something that you can do that can work around that. So I'm just going to throw down this square for some reason just to give you the example. So now I've got these two elements together. I group them, and now once you group them, you actually have pixel perfect precision between the two of them. So whatever you do, it'll stay. You also have much more control over exactly how you want to rotate objects. Right? To the very, very pixel, you can choose how you're going to rotate those objects. So if you're ever looking for really advanced types of formatting, when you group it, the advanced formatting shows up. So check out this. If I come over here to this thermostat, I do have the ability to rotate 90 degrees, right? And I can just keep rotating 90 degrees or 180, whatever. But you saw in here, it's a very, very specific 9.7 rotation, right? Like, I can choose exactly how much I want to rotate this one specific thing. Not just that. Look at this down here. You have the ability to push things by the pixel. So you can resize it, and you can actually change where it's heading. So do you see as I'm adding these numbers, it's slowly, incrementally positioning it. So you have this very, very fine-grained type formatting over what you're doing. Now, if I take these elements, and by the way, you can copy and paste multiple objects. So I copy these two objects, and I'm going to create a new responsive page. and throw them down, it separates the two of them. And do I have the ability to overlap them again in a responsive design? No. Watch that. It pushes it. Again, if you're wondering why, if you're like, well, I want a responsive page that reflows everything, it's not possible. Because for responsive to be responsive, the whole idea of it is that it's going to move and rearrange your content for you. So you don't have, look, my rotate is gone. Do you see it? There's no ability to rotate it anymore. I don't have those types of capabilities on this image, right? I could still do it on a shape, actually, but you'll see that a lot of the capabilities are gone for responsive because we want you to trust us to reflow your content, and that means you need to simplify down your story. Otherwise, we can't just shrink and enlarge it. It's not going to work the same way. Okay, so here we go. We've got our geomap. So on our geomap, we talked about it before. I can zoom in all the way down to the level that I want to. So you can get all the way down to a street level if you so desire. Now, on a geomap, I want to make sure that you know of a couple cool things. One is, right here I'm using a heat map to make it look glowy. It's actually the exact same information. I just have one being done as a glow. So you have all these different layer types. I can do a bubble layer, which is on the top, but then I'm putting a heat map layer right below it, and I'm making the heat map layer the same color as my bubble layer just to make it feel like every single dot's glowing. Do you see that? So if ever you're looking for a trick to how do I make my map glow, this is one way you can make it glow is by just adding a heat map below it. And since the heat map is below it, you won't ever be able to really highlight or select it. It just makes every single one of those glow. So if I turn off the visibility on that layer, you can get the idea. See, very flat. And then if you want to make it glow, you catching that difference? So here's the glow layer, and here's without the glow layer. So it just makes it look a little prettier sometimes. If you're going for that type of style, if you want really flat, obviously don't use this. I like the flat style also. If you're going for this type of style, hey, add a glow. Okay, now let me show you some other things that you can do. This is really, really cool, is of course your flow layer. Your flow layer allows you to show, an origin to a destination, and then it'll draw, I guess it must be on the wrong type of viz for this. Yeah, I must be on the wrong type of viz for this, but you can draw, we have it on the overview page, you can draw the travel lines between those points. So it arcs and curves it based upon the curvature of the map or the globe, but it'll actually show you all these travel lines that you're seeing here. So that's done by using the flow layer. So we've got the flow layer that's going on here. There's one other thing that we're not showing. Let me add it on. This one's really cool. It's the choropleth layer. I always mispronounce it. The choropleth layer, you can say I want to use my location dimension for it. And what it will do is it actually, here you go, it outlines all the different parts of your map. And then we could say, but I want to color it by something, like let's say average age. We're just throwing something down really fast. But there you go. So now you can see it colored by whatever you want it to be colored by. You can actually drill in on these. You don't have to set these up. All it does is it looks at your lat long, it puts inside of that geofence, and then it creates the different shapes based upon it. So it's got a preset. And so for most countries, you can go down to the state or province level. If you're inside of the U.S., you can go down even further. So you can drill even past, from here down to the county level. So you can just keep drilling in on these different areas. So that's just an FYI. Choropleth layers are really cool for creating a hierarchy and being able to drill from top to bottom on things. Now, on this specific one that I'm showing you, so I'm going to zoom out just a second so you can see it all. So on this map that I've got, you can see it looks really pretty, and a lot of that prettiness is actually coming from this background image. So I've thrown down my own image, and I'm making it look really pretty by having that image overlapped in the background. You see it looks really flat without it. When we have this overlapped in the background, again, this is obviously Canvas page, not responsive page for what I'm showing you. But with that background, it looks really nice. Now look, that light is bleeding through these tiles. The way that I'm doing that, the way I'm having my light bleed through on the tiles is make sure you play around with this, which is that you can also use the transparency effect. So this is just a semi-transparent shape. So here it is solid, but I'm making it slightly transparent. and that way that light bleeds through in a nice way. So you can still get that separation, but it feels like, you know, that old Microsoft UI from like 5 years ago if you played Xbox. So we can kind of recreate that feel by having this type of transparency happen. Now, you can also, if you wanted to, you could add borders. So on all of your different charts, you also have the ability to add borders onto it, right, left, top, bottom, etc., and you can put those borders right on. And then if you want also, sometimes I'll just use a shape. Like I've got this line shape. I'm using it as a border on the bottom. So if you're not into this, so let me jump over to the sales page here, and we should have our visualization. So this is a little bit more advanced, but I want to make sure you're aware of it. If ever you find that there's a chart type that we don't support, for instance, today, we don't have word clouds built in today. That's not something we have built in out of the box. But what we do have built in out of the box is our capabilities. So we have an R server that you can access. We have a managed R instance, and you can point to it, and then you can use that to actually create R visualizations, such as word clouds, or, as you see here, this network image. So as you jump into the designer mode, it'll actually reference your existing data set, and you can go through and do your scripting here and access our additional 70 libraries from R, which provides a massive amount of different visualizations. So if you saw anything here and you're like, oh, I wish there was more that I could do from the viz side, don't worry, there is, especially through that R integration. We support, I think it's 21 charts today, and that's very intentional. We don't want to support every chart under the sun. We want to focus you on the most effective charts. We will be adding additional charts down the road, but for right now, this is how we have it. Everything that I did today, I did it the least effective way. Normally, what I would do is I come here to the story preferences. So the reason I did it the way I did today, so you could see how to manually set everything. But ideally, what you would do is you would set it all up here. So I'm going to make my page background red. I'm going to say that my page color for response is also red. My lane colors are white for some reason. Right, so you can set up all of this. I'm going to say all my tiles are white. Oh, I'll actually white out everything. So let me do purple, sure. So you can set everything, what your palettes are going to be, what fonts you're going to use. You could have set everything from your story-wide preferences. Once you set your story-wide preferences, you can opt for it either to apply only to new content or to everything existing. So I'm going to apply it to everything that's existing under the sun, and you'll see we're now in this beautiful red page, purple lanes, white tile backgrounds. So that applies to everything simultaneously. So do not forget about these story-wide preferences. They're also wonderful because now when I create a new page, you'll see it's using that style that I've already pre-selected. So when I usually work with big customers, what I do is I set up their story-wide preferences, and I also save it out as I will save it out as a template. So we also have the ability to create templates, and I'll make it where you can save everything out as a template that they can be using. So that's a really nice feature. Now, what was I going to show you? One sec. The other thing is you also can preview what things are going to look like. So in the case of this one, so we're in this responsive design one. Let me jump over here. You can also, on mobile devices under More, there's actually a device preview. So I can jump into the device preview, and then I can say, yeah, but show me, what's this going to look on my phone? And then right there, look at that. You can see what it looks like on your phone. So it'll do this device preview as well. Play around with it. Have some fun with that. Thank you, everyone, for coming by. This was a lot of content that we covered. Hopefully you realize that. We covered so much together. Keep in touch with me. I'm Jacob Stark at SAP.com. If you're working on a design, you want some feedback, send it to me. Want to connect on LinkedIn and shoot me horrible whatever news articles about how bad my country is, that's great too. So go ahead and find me, jacob.stark at SAP.com. Find me on LinkedIn, however you want to interact. We'll be really happy to talk more about any of these things with you.